You're listening to Tonebenders Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. Take your sound design to the next level with the Creator Access Plan from Sound Ideas. This membership puts 100 downloads a year from over 630,000 world-class sounds right at your fingertips. Easy to search, simple to use, and built for creators. Power your next project with the sounds the pros trust. Go to soundideas.com to learn more. Hey everyone, this is Tim Muirhead, and I will be your host today. Before we get to part 2 of my interview with James Mather about the sound work he did on the 4 Harry Potter films he worked on, I want to do a quick rundown of the Tonebenders event in Mexico City that I just got back from. It was a really fantastic day celebrating the sound community in Mexico. First up in the morning, I did a masterclass presentation for the students at the SAE Institute, Mexico. It was the first time I've ever done anything remotely like this, and I like to think it went really well. The kids seemed super engaged, and I got to walk them through how an animated series goes from the voice recording stage all the way through to the final mix. I had a blast. I want to thank all the students for being so encouraging and supporting me up there. It was a lot of fun. I'm actually going to be doing a similar presentation at Sonic Days in Denmark next month. I'm feeling much more confident now for that one. So if you're going to be at Sonic Days, please make sure you sign up for my talk on sound design for animation. Head to sonicdays.com for the full schedule for that amazing, completely free sound conference coming up next month from November 18th to November 20th. Okay, back to Mexico. Next up after my masterclass was Brian Armstrong, who flew in from LA. He did a masterclass about his work on the Walking Dead franchise, as well as Shogun, for which he won an Emmy. He's the supervising sound editor on both of those, and he broke down a session from each series, showing the Foley and sound effects, dialogue, and ADR to the students. I personally found it super fascinating. Brian was followed up by former Tonebenders co-host Renee Coronado, who came down from Texas to talk about his work doing the in-house sound for the American Airlines Center, the arena where the pro basketball and hockey teams from Dallas play, the Mavericks and the Stars. He broke down the 14-channel mixes he delivers for the hype videos and how he utilizes the unique speaker array in the building. After that, we all went down to the amazing atrium at SAE, where it was set up with rows and rows of seats for panel talks, including a live recording of a Tonebenders episode, something this podcast has never done before. It was super nerve-wracking, but I think it went really well. You'll be able to hear it in a future episode. We got to interview the sound team from Pan's Labyrinth, which is one of my all-time favorite films. The crowd was fantastic, and they made it easy on both me and my guests. Thank you very much for everyone who came. You were an amazing crowd. After the final panel discussion on the future of audio post in Mexico, the exterior courtyard of SAE was opened up where there was a buffet for free dinner and drinks, and we all chatted and laughed well into the night. I met like 80 new people that evening. Everyone was fantastic. Some of the people I met, I'm never going to forget, like Efrain, Leah, Pamela, Eugenio, so many more, Jaime. It was an amazing time. I had so much fun. There are so many people doing interesting and unique work in Mexico. It was really overwhelming. I want to send a big thanks to Carlos Hans for all the work he put in to pull this magical day together, as well as everyone at SAE, Carlos/Barry, Bob, and their whole team. Also a big thanks to the Motion Picture Sound Editors for sponsoring the event. It could never have happened without SAE and MPSE. It was such a massively successful day. I really hope we can make it happen again sometime in the future. Before we get to the main interview, I'm hoping you'll indulge me so I can tell you a story. As you all just heard, I went to Mexico City for this event. Since I was going, my wife came along to be a tourist while I was speaking at the event. The following day, we went to the airport to catch a red-eye flight back to our home in Toronto. We arrived at the airport, got through customs, got through security, and the gate had not been announced yet for our flight. So we just sat in a random space and hung out. After about 20 minutes, bing, our gate is announced, so we pick up all of our stuff, trudge through the airport, and find our new gate. While we're walking there, my wife sees some stores she wants to look in, so we get to our spot, pick some seats where there's a plug. She plugs her phone in as it's nearly dead, tells me she'll be back in 20 minutes, she's going to go shopping. Great. She walks away into the crowded airport. I sit down, go to pull out my phone. but it's not there. I look in all my pockets, I look at my backpack, I look at my luggage. I do not have my phone. I am starting to completely freak out. Where is my phone? I had it a few minutes ago before we moved seats. So now I've got both her luggage and my luggage. I unplug her phone, put it in her backpack, put on her backpack, put on my backpack, grab her wheelie luggage, grab my wheelie luggage. And now I'm running through the airport, dragging this luggage behind me to get back to where I might have lost my phone. As I approach the area of the airport where we were previously sitting, I see that it's empty, except for 10 police officers all surrounding a single chair, and on that chair is a phone. I guess in the Mexican airport, if you leave something behind, they have to treat it as a suspicious object. So they've surrounded it, they've cleared out the area, and as I approach, I'm stopped by police, and I try and explain to them in English, and they only speak Spanish, that it's my phone. By the time I get this information across, I'm surrounded by 3 policemen, ask me to follow them, and I'm taken through the airport, back to security, and put in a small room all by myself with my luggage. Now, what's important here is my wife is coming back from her shopping to find an empty seat where I was once sitting. So her husband is gone, her luggage is gone, her phone is gone because I've got her phone, so she can't even phone anyone to ask for help. She's just sitting there alone in a foreign airport. So I'm back in this room, sitting there, quietly waiting. Meanwhile, our flight departure is approaching. Finally, after about 10 minutes of sitting in this room by myself, a man comes in and starts kind of yelling at me in Spanish, but I don't speak Spanish, so now he's even more annoyed. He leaves again. I sit there for another 10 minutes, waiting what's going to happen next. Finally, another police officer comes in, and he's got my phone in his hand. And he tells me that I have to prove that this is my phone. I unlock the phone with my face, and then he asks me to prove that it's my phone by showing him pictures of me on the phone. So luckily, the night before was the Mexico event, so I took a ton of selfies at it. So I show him, oh, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me. Great. That's your phone. No problem. This is all figured out. Now, it's about 15 minutes till my flight's supposed to be boarding, so we're fine. I'm about a 10-minute walk through the airport now to get back to that original gate. Lots of time. Everything is going to be good. And then this police officer reaches into a desk drawer, pulls out a giant binder and thumps it down on the desk, opens it up, takes a page out, flips a few more pages, takes another page out, flips a few more pages, takes another page out. And he's like, you're free to go as soon as we finish the paperwork. Oh no. All this paperwork is in Spanish. Again, I don't speak Spanish, so he has to translate every line I have to fill out. And I'm filling it out, and then there's pages just full of paragraphs in Spanish, and he's just like, sign here. So I just sign there. Eventually, after about 10 minutes of that, he says, you're free to go. I grab all my luggage, put the 2 sets of backpacks on, and run through the airport to get back in time. When I get there, my wife is completely freaking out. She yells at me and tells me I better have a good story for a reason not being there. And I tell her, I've got a good story, don't you worry. We go get on the plane, and it takes off. It all took about 35 minutes, but it was a crazy 35 stressful minutes. And in the end, you know what? It's actually the better of the possible outcomes because I got my phone and we made our flight. I was worried I would never see the phone again, which is probably what the outcome should have been. So the moral of the story is, don't lose your phone in the Mexico City airport. It will become quite an ordeal. Okay, let's get to today's episode with James Mather. This is part 2. Go back 1 episode in your podcatcher to hear part 1 in episode 331. Stay tuned after I wrap with James for a mini interview with Glenn Freemantle, Gillian Dodders, and Ben Barker. All 3 of them worked on the Harry Potter prequels, the Fantastic Beast Trilogy. I was interviewing them for a completely different project, and I was able to squeeze in just a few minutes about doing sound for the Wizarding World as an added bonus to this Harry Potter-themed set of episodes. But first up, we'll hear from James Mather, who invited me to his studio in London, England, for this one-on-one talk. James will be joining me in Denmark next month for the Sonic Days conference, so that's another great reason to attend. Okay, here's James and I talking about Harry Potter. There's like a legacy of sounds from Harry Potter. It changed the way magic sounds on film. And obviously those sounds existed on a hard drive that got passed from team to team to team. But was there any communication? Like, did you reach out to Eddie Joseph when you came on?
Yes, Eddie's a friend. I've worked with Eddie on other projects. He and I have spent lots of time together. When I started, I remember saying to him, where do I start? Eddie just said, just think of it. It's a film. It's like every other film you've done. It's just, you start where you start and you work your way through and you build it up, and you just do what you do. Wise words. Because there's nothing else you can do other than what you do. So obviously the first thing you do is you watch all the previous films. The arbiter of taste and continuity seemed to fall very much on David Heyman's shoulders. It was his responsibility to make sure that these films maintained a continuity throughout and that they were true to J.K.'s vision and her book.
And David Heyman was one of the producers?
He was one of the producers. He was the guy that got the rights to the book and got the whole thing going. And so he would be very instrumental during the mixing of these movies, where we'd do a playback and there'd be himself and David Barron and David Yates. His point of view would be very much about, we're veering away from the way it was written. And this is taking it in a different way, especially with some of the battle scenes and stuff, because it can become overwhelming with, orcs and sort of giants and whatever else is stampeding down the hill with magic flying here, there and everywhere. And actually, he was always very good at reminding us that it's about crossing the bridge. These moments are great, but they don't have to be the big be all and end all. So we watched the other movies and it was quite clear that there was a language that was evolved, created a world where sound played a part. With the guys that I kept on from the previous show, we had the library, the inherited library. That empowered us to be able to keep moving forward with the same momentum from previous shows. And then obviously, once confident and, a little flexed, we could then start changing it for how we felt it should and also how David wanted it to.
The books were originally written to grow with a kid who read the first book.
Yeah.
They're not meant to, an 8-year-old reads book 1 and then reads book 7. Book 7 is a much more complicated and deep story.
Yes.
So you got to do the last 3 books, but 4 films.
Yes.
Where you're allowed to hurt people more.
Yes.
Were you conscious of that?
Yes. The Prisoner of Azkaban for me was the turning point where the kids started becoming teenagers and where the teenagers became complicated. And up until that point, they had been kids and it was fun and scary, but kids scary. So it was very interesting to see how they were going to take it from the Order of the Phoenix, how that was then going to increase, ramp up, swerve into a different dynamic of emotion. Obviously, the horcrux and the influence of Voldemort, it's basically when Voldemort appears. And now we have a villain and he's badass, and it's like, are they ready? Suddenly the childhood is over and they've got to be grown-ups and they've got to work out how to defeat this evil. The whole journey takes a different shift, and you're now pitched against good and evil, and it's much more who's on whose side, and it's about the politics of Hogwarts and okay, so hang on a minute, they're not good. Oh no, they are good. And it gave the storylines much more of a twist and a turn in a sort of thriller horror genre than it had before. That had a big play on the music. The music really had to kind of keeping all of John Williams' beautiful melodies and themes and then make it something else. So you could have the celebration and the fun and the romance. These kids are starting to fall in love with other kids, and they're not kids, they're teenagers having feelings that are new, along with all the magic stuff as well. So that complicated era of life, I thought they captured really well. And there's an anxiety, and there's, Harry does carry the world on his shoulders, and his friends want to protect him, and it gets darker, it gets heavier. It allows those moments of lightness and humour to really shine through, and you could see the actors growing into it as well. It's extraordinary how art mimics life, life mimics art. The fact that these kids have grown up through this and they are going through the same things that they're performing. So like I said, it was very familial. Everybody was very eager to protect everybody while they go through this process, to make sure that they got the best out of everything they were doing, out of the acting, out of the education on site, out of, for us, the access to the stages, we could go and record sounds anywhere we wanted at Leavesden, because it was completely Harry Potter. It was nothing else was filming there. So we were there for over a year, I think, on site. Get flamethrowers, we could go and build. There's a scene of us stacking chairs and tables as high as we possibly could to start ripping them down with ropes to get that scene where they escape from the vault.
Room of Requirements?
Room of Requirements, yeah, which is a mega scene. It starts off with tiny little sounds of wings in jars and, you know, and it ends up with this furnace and the whole place is burning down. It's a disaster. And we had all this space and all those toys to go and play with to make these sounds. It was a playtime. It really was. We could go outside and we dropped a caravan, took a crane, lifted a caravan up and dropped it, recording it with microphones inside it. We dropped a piano from about 60 foot for this scene where there's a scene where the piano reconstitutes itself in the living room. In order to do that, we recorded the sound of the piano dropping and smashing, and then we twisted it and bent it. In fact, most of the horcrux sounds were remnants of things that we did with the piano, like scraping wires and twanging things, and that ended up becoming that, and vuvuzelas became the key sounds for the horcrux.
Vuvuzelas.
Vuvuzelas. They were the bane of everybody's life.
That in a while.
I know. It was that summer when everyone, I think it must have been the World Cup, because it was, everyone hated vuvuzelas. I was like, brilliant, they hate vuvuzelas. Let's use them. Let's make them for the sound that everyone wants to hate. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the magic. What we haven't talked about are the creatures.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's some really amazing creatures. And sometimes there's even creatures that cross between magic and creature that are made out of fire and ice and stuff like that.
Again, being part of that process over a long period, you get to know the people who are animating, designing, the visual effects team. And so having started in animation, I was very aware that animators spend day and night for weeks, months, developing these creatures, the visual of these creatures. They're drawn and then they're turned into 3D models and then they're built. And, you know, the best thing we could do from my experience with Aardman is go and talk to the guy who designed this thing, because you can guarantee that in his mind, as he's doing it, there's some sound, there's something he's thinking of, either a magpie or that raspy cackle that a magpie does, or a chiseled kind of yell that a pheasant makes. And he will have sounds. And of course he does. Is it a bird sound that you think? He said, yeah, definitely. It is that kind of magpie, raspy sound. It's already in the DNA of the creature just by the default of him thinking about it when he made it. So you start with that and you work out, that's going to work. The amount of animals that we recorded to get sounds that we could then manipulate for the creatures on the screen. My cousin has a farm with buffalo, big buffalo, water buffalo on, and so I'd go and record them, and pigs and goats, and they had animals on site as well. They had all the owls, obviously, and all the birds on site, so we could go and record owls and whenever we fancied. It's very weird. In order to make it as organic a soundtrack as possible, we tried to stick very close to using animal sounds. And then we would augment it with human mimicry of animal sounds so that you could actually get a performance out of it that would tie those animal sounds together. And you'd find crew members that suddenly had these incredible talents of growling or guttural, kind of low frequency throat sounds that you think, oh, okay, I never knew that about it. Let's record it. Let's do that. We'd always have a room built wherever we were, mainly up at the studios, but where we could just go in and record stuff, vocals particularly. Somebody had a cold, get them in. Let's record that. If anybody was sneezing, we'd record those because, again, they're useful for spells. But the creatures were the most fun because we'd try and use our crew as much as we could. Andy Kennedy did a lot of sound design for us. He did a lot of vocal effects for Grawp, but he just got the characters. He nailed it. And, we would have the opportunity to get actors in, get an actor to do something. And strangely, it's like you're limited to a time constraint when you do that. Whereas if you've got team members and somebody just goes, I just want to try to do something, they can nip in and make some sound effects, mess around with them and turn them into something that they like. And then you can get somebody to try and mimic it. And if they do, brilliant. If they do something better, even better. But 9 times out of 10, most of the creature vocal stuff were done by the sound team and members of their family. My daughters can scream like nothing else. I'll go and record her then. Brilliant. Anybody could come up with an idea and go and record something and make it happen. You didn't have to be the sound designer. You didn't have to be the dialogue editor. It could be the dialogue editor doing the sound of a thestral. It could be, it was a free-for-all for creativity, which is definitely a good practice. Delegation of hierarchy doesn't work for me. It just causes resentment. It stops people from getting their flow through. And that was a really good example of how it works, how well it can work.
These movies were giant hits from number one.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining that budgeting was not a massive problem. You could have a fairly large crew, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you could. I mean,
what was the crew on any one of these films?
I think we were about 8 or 9, expanding towards the end. Obviously, when you start mixing, your crew is divided from those working on the tracks and those sitting on the stage. So you have to increase the crew at the latter stages just to be able to cope with recuts and conforms. We'd have 2 assistants and a trainee. We'd have a Foley, a couple of dialogue guys, one doing production, the other doing crowds and ADR. And then we'd have 3 to 4 sound designers that would work in conjunction and in isolation from each other. What I realised in the previous productions, the previous movies, is that people were given responsibility to do this throughout. Right, you're going to do all the fire in this movie. Which is great, because it's a very linear way of working and it allows everybody to focus on what they're supposed to be doing and other people can do the others. What I got into and what I explored and had done previously on other films was the notion that if you empower everybody to work, so you give somebody a sequence, you go, right, you're going to do the heavy lifting on this action scene. The chase through the woods, I want this to be really visceral and real. It needs to sound like we're with them. So we can make it messy. It doesn't have to be tidy. So you'd give it to somebody and they'd do a fantastic job, but their slant was towards more the feet and the movement. And then you'd say, okay, brilliant, thank you. And then you'd give it to somebody else. What I'm missing is this. And so they'd put a level on it that was different. Very mindful and respectful of the previous person's work. So it takes all the resentment and the ownership away and it increases the potential of collaboration. So it's ownership through collaboration rather than through individual achievement, which for me, managing people up to 9 or more is quite important, that everybody feels that they've got a voice and they can be heard and everybody has the opportunity to do something that they may never have done before. In Potter, there was a lot of that. So it was about ideas and it was about freedom of expression to do those ideas. And if somebody else then changed them slightly by adding something else to it, they would be involved in that process and say, yeah, I love it. This is great. Okay, well, in that case, if we're going to do this, can I try that? It just increased the potential. And it's a management process to make sure that people don't get waylaid and start going down the wrong path. And you've got to keep everybody focused on what the timescale is and what the expectations are within that timescale. And that's always the case on any film, on any big major tentpole movie. There's the ambition of, well, we've got money. We can actually do stuff that we've never done before and we can do it on this. We can take a plane and do this and we can go. And you kind of go, yeah, you can. But are you going to get all that done and be ready for a mix in November or wherever? And it's that management of expectations on all levels. So you sort of say, I love what you're saying. I love the way you're thinking about the thestral. Do it, then let's play with it. Because I've learned this more and more and more, and it never stops being a repeating lesson, is that you can't describe a sound. You have to hear it. Filmmakers have been saying this all my career. I'll know when I hear it. What do you think? No, I'm not sure. What would you like us to do? I'll know when I hear it. And it's like, okay, but they're employing us for that reason, to allow them to hear the sound that they're not sure that they know what it is, but they'll know. Tom Cruise has the same thing. He wants to feel it. If he doesn't feel it, it's not working. And there's a lot of other directors now that also say that same thing, and they can feed off a nuance that you might have changed something fractionally, even if it's just a slight EQ thing on a change. And they go, why don't I feel it anymore? And it's extraordinary because they are dialed in and they know what they're expecting. So with the team, it's the same thing. You want to get the team to be able to understand why they're there. We have this amazing task to make people or encourage people to listen. And so many times people don't hear what's said. The intent of the way something is said can be translated in 5 different ways by 5 different people. No, he meant that. No, I'm sure what he said. And so our job as sound people is about listening. First and foremost, that's the most important thing we've got to do. And that's something I drill into everybody. It's like, yes, just listen to what the filmmakers are saying. Listen to it carefully. Don't say anything. Our job's to listen and then translate. Working with a big team is great. I love it. But it's also, it has its challenges.
So I was wondering, after you finished the main Harry Potter storyline,
Yes.
since then there's been a new franchise come up, the Fantastic Beast. Did you have any talks with the sound team that worked on those?
No, that was a very different setup. David Heyman had worked with Glenn Freemantle on Gravity, and obviously done very well with it, and was very keen to continue his collaboration with him. And it was the perfect time to go new, try something different for them and for me as well. It was like, as much as I loved that process, you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, I was very lucky to have the support of other directors. David Barron linked me up with Ken Branagh, who I love working with. So that was kind of branching me into another world of Disney stuff and, magic still, but different with Cinderella. So I was very keen to not have to feel like I was now pigeonholed as the magic guy with the animals and the thing. It was like, no, this is brilliant. This is a really good time where it's a different world or a different time within that world, and there are going to be different creatures. It's not like a repeat of what we've already done. It'll be interesting to see what the TV series, how that plays. I have no idea, but it was pretty much 5 years of Harry Potter, and that's 5 years is perfect.
That's enough.
Yeah. I've never said it's enough, but it was definitely I was full. Mm-hmm. It was time to have a amuse-bouche and something a little lighter.
So is there any piece of technology that's come out, sound processing or anything that's come out since you did the Harry Potter movies, that you've seen and thought, oh, that would have been really cool?
We had a lot of good stuff. We had the Fairlight, the Synclavier, the Chimer. We had a lot of early doors sound morphing tools that were really clunky and really frustrating, but sometimes would do something unexpected, and it was like, wow, that's amazing. That goat sounds like a baby crying, or that. There was a lot of hit and miss. Nowadays, plugins in Pro Tools, all the companies that make these incredible plugins, there's noise reducing plugins that are probably the biggest leap I would say in the sound design world is the mixing processing that you can now do within Pro Tools. And the one touch button that will remove all bad background is like, how did that would have been nice. I think from the sound design perspective, you can record more. You can record it at a higher rate, unlimited bandwidth, microphones that are tiny that do a phenomenal job that people can use, so that when you slow it down and pitch it down, there's no artifacts. It's smooth as you like, and it's brilliant for doing animal sounds as a vocal. The real benefit has gone into production dialogue. I think that's where it's really, like, Cedar was a stalwart. You could use that, and then that became a plug-in, and then the evolution of that world is just extraordinary.
For the last question, what was your favorite sound moment that you guys created in the 4 films that you worked on?
Oh, there's a moment where they're in the lake and in the cave. They're on a tiny island. Mm-hmm. Dumbledore is struggling. He's drinking out of the font. That's really unnerving. That scene is like you're in darkness. Incredible set. For me, the texture and the delicacy of that scene that became then like The Living Dead, being dragged into the water, and that for me was a soundscape that stands out on its own. I think the most emotional soundscape is the end, when Neville cuts the snakes and they get his head off and Harry and Voldemort fire off against each other in the courtyard. That for me, as the most visceral and emotional moment of sound. There's a wonderful moment where they disengage and there's just a beat. Then Harry goes in. That beat was extraordinary, and it was it's sometimes for me the most rewarding sounds are when all the sounds of the movie come together and work as one. and they give you that amazing emotional rush, and there's no one thing about it. It's everything happening at the same time. And that's the art form for me. It's not about the individual, it's about the whole symphony of sounds that come together.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me today. Thanks for welcoming me into your studio.
Thank you for coming.
This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it a lot.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I can't tell you how great it was that James was able to give me so much of his time for this talk. Getting to see his studio, which is definitely one of the most unique studios I have ever been to, was also a real pleasure. Okay, as a special little added bonus, you're about to hear a mini interview with Glenn Freemantle, Gillian Dodders, and Ben Barker. Glenn and Ben worked on the sound effects, and Gillian was the dialogue supervisor for the Fantastic Beast Trilogy, the prequels to the Harry Potter films. I only had a few minutes at the end of an interview that was originally scheduled to talk about something else entirely, so there's not a lot here, but hopefully it can add a little bit of a different perspective to the wizarding world and coming up with the sounds that bring it to life. So when you started on Fantastic Beasts, did you get like a legacy library or did you start from scratch?
Well, we started from scratch because they were different
creatures.
Mm-hmm. Different creatures. They're all different creatures in everyone, so they were just made. And also, we remade all the magic again.
You did?
Yeah, because times had changed.
But we played
going
sort
back
of
in time.
homage.
We made an homage to it, but we just wanted to obviously do our own thing.
We did sort of think about the wands in the Potter series. You know, we had to sort of continue that theme along because a great team had designed a great soundtrack there. So yeah, we kind of, took that as what the wand and magic world sounded like. It's a different chapter, isn't it? So there's a bit of license to make it a bit different.
Evolve it in the new storyline. Techniques are built more. We have more tools to our toolbox. So that's what we did.
One of my favorite sounds is the sound of the Obscurious, the black spaghetti swirling kind of. It's one of those things where it's something that none of us have ever seen before.
Yeah.
But when I saw it, I was like, yes, that's what that sounds like.
Yeah.
But it kept changing, actually, because it was foggy at the beginning, wasn't it, right? Then it became liquidy,
changes, doesn't it?
And then it became something else. It was changing all the way through, so everything would be just changing with it, wouldn't it, really?
But that's where you guys also do the silent thing, isn't it? When it disappears.
Yeah,
there's like a split second of silence before the sound kicks back in again.
Nice to hear that you thought that's what it sounded like.
In these talks about the sounds of Harry Potter, we've talked a lot about the sound design, the sound effects. Gillian, you're the dialogue editor. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the dialogue side of things for Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. Who are the production mixers for those movies that you worked on?
Mitch Lowe or Simon Hayes, and they're really, really good British sound recorders. Both quite adamant that their sound will be recorded and everybody needs to listen, which I know actors might find annoying or directors might find annoying, but the sounds in themselves means that you don't have to shoot a hell of a lot of ADR. So I love it when I see if it's Simon or Mitch Lowe recording, because then
you're in for safe hands.
Safe hands, and you're going to be recording ADR for story purposes rather than because whole scenes have been messed up.
And they talk to you all the time, don't they?
I have to say I have a really good relationship with most of the floor recorders in the UK. Sort of I phone everybody before I do a job and have a chat to them and ask them what were the terrible times or with the good times, or what do they think I should look out for. So it's really, really nice to be able to have that relationship, because I think a lot of dialogue editors, they bitch a lot about their floor recorders, but they don't ever speak to them, sort of thing. So I like the fact that I have a good relationship with those guys. And they'll often call me before a film to go, okay, Jill, so I'm going to have to put 24 radio mics on actors, just be aware, so they give us a heads up. Like on the next one we're doing for Alex, it's like, there's 24 mics. Do we need 24 mics? And it's like, yeah, I do. So, you know what I mean? So it's great to have that relationship with those guys so that they chat to you beforehand. But yeah, Fantastic Beasts, Mitch did the last two, I think.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you answering a couple of questions there you weren't expecting. I wish I could have talked to this team more about the Fantastic Beast Trilogy, but you take what you can get sometimes. Major thanks to James Mather for letting me hang out with him to talk about his work on the 4 films in the Harry Potter trilogy that he was the supervising sound editor on. Speaking of hanging out with James, he and I will both be at the Sonic Days conference from November 18th through 20th in Denmark. This entirely free conference has announced its schedule, and you can find out who all the speakers will be by going to sonicdays.com. Thanks for listening today. We'll talk to you soon. Take your sound design to the next level with the Creator Access Plan from Sound Ideas. This membership puts 100 downloads a year from over 630,000 world-class sounds right at your fingertips. Easy to search, simple to use, and built for creators. Power your next project with the sounds the pros trust. Go to soundideas.com to learn more. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues, or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.